You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I want to ask you a question. Are you ready to honestly, truly live your life? Are you ready to live your true life? Are you ready to be full on, full throttle, authentic? Are you ready to take off those training wheels and super fly it out? Are you ready? Because oftentimes, before we can actually be completely honest, we have fear. We have fear, will other people accept us? Is this normal? Is this the right thing to do? Can I be comfortable in my own skin? Am I allowed to live my own life? Do I have to take care of these people? Is it right for me to let them go? Is it right for me to let go of relationships that are no longer benefiting me? Is it okay to leave codependent relationships? Is it okay to say, you know what? I don't have the answer. Is it okay to want to spend time with more people that feel that way? Better yet, is it okay for me to be me? On today's show, I think that we're going to really illuminate the human condition. Better yet, illuminate your situation where you can honestly evaluate in your life what needs to be augmented, what needs to be revived, and what needs to be maximized to living your true life. Okay, let's begin with what I like to call as the awakening. Okay, and I know a lot of people probably heard, this is the time, it's like the awakening time in our world, in our country at this time, this day and time. It's called the awakening. People are awakening to who they truly are. And I think that's amazing, but I think that the awakening standpoint actually directly impacts us all on an individual level. And I want to illuminate that right now because I believe that I am an awakened being. Okay? I don't believe it. I know I am. And what's so cool about that is I've been working on this for a long time. And what I consider somebody to be awakened is, first of all, you actually see that you have value. You've overcome any of the self-esteem issues that have been plaguing you your entire life. And yeah, certainly we all have setbacks now and then, better days than others. However, we realize when we're having that setback and we understand. And we're not critical on ourselves like we were before. But in the same respect, we work to be better than we were yesterday. When you're awakened, you're not trying to compete against other people. You realize that there is no such thing as scarcity. That's an illusion. In reality, everybody has a chance, everybody has a place, and everybody has something that they excel at better than anybody else. And so it's not about, doing everything great. It's about doing what you do amazing and believing in what you do. But more than that, believing in who you are. And that is super, super critical to being awakened. A huge facet of being awakened to me is being able to understand that there is a higher power. There is a higher function. There is an energy, a vibration. Many people call it God. And believing in God and understanding exactly where you are in relation to God. And that is a pure awakening when you realize that, it's not like you are in a vacuum. It's like you're part of the entire thing. You're part of it. The belief that we have directly relates to who we are. The beliefs that we have and what we hold dear is also within us. And what we see outside of us as far as godly is within us as well. And when we're awakened to that knowledge and we work to increase that knowledge and to educate and to meditate and to pray and to believe and to understand and to see the big picture, that to me is the golden sign of being awakened. Another good sign of being awakened is that you've realized that there are some demons that you deal with. There's some things that we deal with that, get in the way of who we can truly be. Some of us have had to overcome dependencies on drugs or alcohol, prescription drugs. Some of us have had to overcome and work through mental impairments that hold us back from being who we truly are. Sometimes we've had to overcome the low self-esteem and the disbelief that we have in self that we learned somewhere on the road of our lifetime. And as we overcome these demons and we see them for what they are and we dispel them and we work on a daily basis to not allow them back into our life, that is what you call awakened. Why is that awakened? Because when you realize the power and how amazing your life is, the last thing you want to do is to lower yourself down into that situation. A good example is I think a lot of times when people don't realize their value, they're upset, they're insecure, their life has been painful, they've gone through a lot of heartaches, a lot of hardships, a lot of problems, mental, emotional, physical issues. There's a tendency to want to medicate. There's a tendency to want to over-medicate. There's a tendency to want to take drugs, to drink alcohol. There's a tendency to want to escape the reality of where they are right now. And I think many of you have been there. I think many of us in all of our lives have been there at one time or another. And to say that we haven't is probably a lie. And when we're there escaping, we haven't realized how important it is to not escape. And we don't realize how important it is to not escape until we realize the value of what we have. Right? And when we realize the value of what we have, we don't want to escape because every single moment of every single day that we have is vitally precious, and we know it. We're hyper aware of how valuable every moment of our day is, and we live true to that value decision once we are awakened. Sure, there'll be times where we feel as though we question where we're at. We might question the validity of some of the things that have come into our mind about the awakening. We may even resort back to old thoughts and patterns of feeling insecure, powerless, less self-esteem, more insecurity. And when we go there, we have to be aware of going there. And when we are awakened, we are aware and we see it. We are aware of it. We notice it. And we quickly go back into the awakened process of being highly mindful. As we go through being mindful on a daily basis or recalibrating our mindfulness, we realize really what's going on in really almost every situation that we encounter. I think like you and I can both relate to the fact of when we were younger and we would meet people and they would mesmerize us. When we'd be in a situation that we think was awesome or amazing or confusing. And now it's not like it's humdrum. It's actually in Technicolor. Whether it's a great situation to be in, whether it's not. Whether this person will be a wonderful ally and somebody that you can grow spiritually together, or whether it's just a fake facade. I've realized that the more awakened I am, the quicker I can analyze any situation. The quicker I can analyze any situation and be positive in my knowledge, because I also have reflected and raised the bar when it comes to respecting my gut instinct, my thoughts, my ability to know what's right, my ability to feel what's right. And that's the key. And when we feel a situation and we understand it, not from an emotionally out of control feeling, but a grounded, aware, mindful, silent, no thoughts position, No deciding if this is good or bad, just in the moment. It's almost like that keen sense of smell and feeling. It's like, it's like you're a Spider-Man or Batman or something. You can feel instantaneously in a situation, and it is so right. And you don't want to have any impairment to that ability. You've realized how valuable that ability is, and to impair it with anything would be an absolute shame. When I return, I'll be talking more about being awakened, and later on I'll be talking about letting go of those codependent relationships in our life that get in the way of us being truly who we are and get in the way of us living our honest, authentic, true life. If you haven't already, check out my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search Ashley Burgess, Berges, Berges. I have new video content up each week on relationships, overcoming adversity, and dealing with manipulation. Live your true life perspectives. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Are you ready to live your true life? Are you ready to live a fulfilling life based on being authentic and real and true to yourself in every way, shape, and form? If you are, it begins with being awakened. And right before the break, I was talking about being awakened, being able to see and understand and feel and connect with a higher power, letting go of those demons, those things, those addictions that get in the way of us being honest and true, and taking off that veil and that mask. That's so important, because a lot of times we self-medicate. We use alcohol, drugs, prescription medication, whatever it is. And we use those things to deaden, to make us not feel, to disconnect us. Okay? And I get it. I understand that. And sometimes we use alcohol for that, whatever that is, to try to distance ourselves. But when we finally take off these masks, these layers that don't work for us anymore, we're able to really evaluate ourselves and realize not only do we not need it, but that was actually taking away from how great we truly are, how amazing we truly are. It was getting in the way of our light shining. Another thing about being awakened is that we've dealt with our toxicity of self. You hear a lot of folks, and you've seen probably some videos on YouTube of mine about toxic people and limiting the amount of time that you spend with toxic people, and how to identify toxic people and what to do when they're in your life and how to eliminate them and all that great stuff. Well, that's great, and that's a big deal, and that's a huge thing. That's something we'll be talking about here in just a few minutes. But one of the biggest things about being awakened is that you've got to let go of everything that's toxic about you. Okay? You've got to let go about those things that make you a toxic person. And all of us have some traits that we have to work with. All of us have some things that we have to overcome. And what I like to call that is responsibility. Okay, when we are aware of a situation and we've taken responsibility for it, we can work really hard to overcoming the limitations that it has. Okay? And when we do that, it's very, very rewarding. And when we check ourselves, when we're not being truthful, or we're not being straight up honest, or we're not giving everything we can, or we're not believing in self, or we're not believing in others, or we're trying to hold others back, or we're trying to play games or be manipulative, when we become aware of those things and we stop those things in its tracks, that's when we become awakened. When we can actually analyze and step back from self and be able to see us truly for who we truly are, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, and be able to actually work on cleaning house on the things that, are kind of toxic about our personalities and things that we do that aren't for the best of other people or for the best of ourselves. And when we become aware of those things and we work and we have due diligence to work on those, it's amazing. It's so therapeutic, because it's not trying to be perfect. It's just trying to be the best we can be. And when we really focus on that, we clean house on the stuff that's holding us back. There was stuff in my past that I realized that I was I was compensating or I had a lower self-esteem, and I would do things based on that self-esteem. Like I wouldn't I wouldn't put myself out there because I would think that I wasn't good enough or whatever it was. I've always been a caring, nurturing person. And one of the toxic things that I found about myself is that, I had a tendency back then of maybe being in codependent relationships and trying to save somebody. And that's another thing, too, is that we can't want to save people. We have to just work on ourselves. When we work on ourselves, we fundamentally change everything. Because that's what we're doing. We're working on ourselves and we're augmenting that mold, okay? The mold that we came in on, we're augmenting that to be the best that we can possibly be. Another factor of being awakened is kind of what I was talking about when it comes to the demons, is that you've given up addictions. You no longer have a substance or a pill or a drink or somebody like using that as a crutch. Addictions are very interesting things, and they can begin to rule our life. They begin to be a job, like a career that you don't get paid to do. And a career that really takes over your entire life and messes up absolutely anything and everything it can possibly mess up until there's nothing left. And when you are awakened, you've gotten rid of the addictions. You become aware of the addictions. You let them go. You work on it. It's a day-to-day basis. And you work on it because you care enough about this lifetime to actually work on it. You care enough about your lifetime to actually put the work and the effort into being better than you were yesterday. It's not about competition with other people. It never has and it never will be. Okay, that's an illusion. That's a huge illusion that a lot of us have fallen into. And I think it's because of competitive natures. It's because of sports. It's competition. It's the idea of scarcity. There's not enough, so we compete. Instead, we don't realize that we have to work on ourselves. And one of the main caveats of this is bettering ourselves and getting out of that competition, but maybe making it more of a personal competition. And not in a weird way, like not in an addictive, competitive way, but more in a, wow, this is amazing. Last month I was here, and now I'm here. Last year I was in this spot in my life, and now I'm here, and I have grown and moved on in my life so much. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing, and I think that when we realize those kind of things and we take note of those kind of things and we analyze those kind of things and we're aware of those kind of changes, it's dynamic, because it also means that we care enough to care about how we got here. We care about how we got here. Another point about being awakened is that we don't hold any more resentments. We're not resentful. And we're not trying to get revenge. Anytime that you're trying to get revenge and you got resentments and all this stuff, it's not a good place to be. It is not attractive, I'll tell you that. But also, it's really unhealthy. What happens in these situations when we get that way is it overcomes and overtakes your entire life. Anger is a happy life killer, okay? Anytime that we have a lot of stored up anger, resentment, thinking about revenge, we have a tendency of, not living that great of a life. That kind of revenge and anger clouds our judgments on every level it can. And anger is one of those things that it kind of permeates everything. It discolors everything into a shade of a certain red or whatever color that is. And it really takes over our life because we cannot compartmentalize resentment. I'll say that again. We cannot compartmentalize resentment. And we can't compartmentalize anger. There's no compartmentalization of anger. Anger and resentment seep into everything. Every relationship, every activity. Even if your anger is based on your upbringing or your dad not being there or your mother leaving and leaving you alone as a kid or whatever it is, even if the anger stems back from that and it's a specific person, it still permeates everything. And the only way that it won't is when we let it go, and we have to work at it. It's not like you just go, oh yeah, anger, see you later, I'm done with you. No, it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. It's a challenge. It's tough. It can seem overwhelming, but we got to deal with the stuff at hand. And an awakened person has done their due diligence when it comes to doing an inventory of self. Self-inventory is so important. To do that inventory of what I've dealt with, what I haven't dealt with, what do I still need to deal with, why haven't I dealt with this, why haven't I overcome that, and what do I need to see in this? And when you realize all this stuff, when you do that self-inventory, it can be scary in the beginning, but eventually it becomes very empowering. And an awakened person has gone through that process, dealt with that stuff, overcome these things, dealt with it, found peace with it, let it go, and grown from it. A non-awakened person hasn't dealt with it, swept it under the rug, doesn't want to hear about it, doesn't want to deal about it. But you know what? It's still affecting them. Because you can't compartmentalize it. You can't act like it doesn't exist. It's part of you. Okay? So we have to actually be proactive and powerful in the process of dealing with it, to overcome the stuff that's holding us back. And when you are working and being awakened, you realize the power that you have, the personal power you have to change your life in the right way, in the truthful way, in the honest way. And you understand that it's a day-to-day, minute-to-minute situation. It's not something you do and then it's done and it's over with. No, it's a lifestyle. It's something that you do on a daily basis. It's something that you maintain and work at and work to be better than you were yesterday. Joining me live in studio on Live Your True Life Perspectives, Bill and Elizabeth Cooper, Precious Paws supplement creators and dog lovers, to offer their valuable information on ways that we can help our dogs to live a better life. Bill, great to have you in studio today.
Hey, Ashley. I wanted to talk today about debunking some of the myths of spay and neuter. If you haven't had your dog spayed or neutered yet, it's time. Unless you're a breeder, you should have your dog spayed or neutered. You know, the first myth is, my dog will get fat. If you do see less activity levels, give them some extra time to enjoy an activity with you, an extra walk or time in the yard or at the dog park. The surgery itself will not cause weight gain. The second myth, my dog won't be as protective. And you know, your dog's natural instinct to protect his family won't change. He may be less aggressive toward other dogs, but not toward people. The third myth is, I'm worried about my dog having any kind of surgery. And spay and neuter is one of the safest and most common procedures done on dogs. The minimal risks are far outweighed by the benefits. The fourth myth, but my dog's a purebred. You know, unless you're a breeder or you're going to enter your dog in a dog show, your dog deserves the same benefits as any other dog. Shelters are full of purebreds too. You know, another myth is, my dog's too young. And most dogs should be spayed or neutered between 4 and 6 months of age before they have their first cycle. You know, there's a lot more to this. And if you want to find out the full story, you can go to our website, preciouspawshealth.com, and look for our dog tips page.
If you haven't already, Elizabeth and Bill have an amazing website, preciouspawshealth.com, and you can learn so much. There's a wealth of information for the dog lover, the dog parent, the dog owner, and it makes your life just easier with some things that we didn't even know about and some things to reinforce the knowledge that we have. When I return, I'll be talking about letting go of codependent relationships. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives. We'll be back in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Are you ready to live that true life? Are you ready to be authentic and real? right before the break, I was talking about being fully awakened and working every day. It's a lifestyle commitment. It's a life commitment to be awakened, to letting go of those demons, to overcoming the toxicity in ourselves, to overcoming and gaining power over addictions, to finding the higher power, to understanding that, to seeing oneself within that higher power, to working through that, to learning, to growing, and to believing. All these things mean that you are working on being fully awakened. And when we become fully awakened and we're working on it every day and we're learning and we're having amazing, mindful downloads on a daily basis, and you're learning, you're growing, and you're believing in the process, and you're working, and it's not every day is going to be great and wonderful, but you're working at it and you're processing it and you're not defining it. And that's a huge component of being awakened, is we're not defining our lives are good or bad anymore. We're not coloring every moment with a pre-existing thought that happened a long time ago and defining it and putting it in this little hole and defining, okay, this is going to be a good experience, this is going to be a bad experience. You know what I'm saying? It's like trying to put a peg in a round hole. It's like, that's not what our life is. And when we get highly awakened, we realize that when we do the right thing and we're honest and truthful, things will always work out. There might be times that you have to let go, and that's what I want to talk about right now. Letting go of codependency and letting go of toxicity relationships in your life. Once you become awakened and you're working on this, you cannot turn backwards. Okay? And many of us say, well, we've worked on ourselves. We're awakened. Well, that's great. And that's awesome. That's wonderful. And I'm not telling you to judge other people. Well, what I'm saying is an awakened person cannot very well work with or be in a relationship with an unawakened person. Okay? And I know that that's tough. And I'm going to explain that right now because I found myself in certain relationships that I thought that, it would get better. Or that person would begin to awaken. And basically, I don't know what I was trying to tell myself, but that's all a lie. That's not true. Me putting bets on somebody else to be awakened, that's not for me to do. I have no power in that area at all. I cannot change someone's life. I can impact them. I can impart knowledge. I can help them, but I can't change their life. They have to do it for them, okay? And when you do try to change someone's life, karma's going to probably come after you, okay? Because what happens is that you try to make these changes what you think is right for them, but that's not your life, and you don't have the right to choose what's right for them. You only have the right to choose what's right for you, okay? And we often feel like, well, this would be right, and I'm sure it is right, but for them it is not because it's not their choosing. A good example is somebody that's on drugs, somebody that's doing cocaine and drinking and out of control, and you and I both know they need to go to rehab and get better and stop doing the cocaine and stop doing the alcohol, but until they're ready to get sober, until they're ready to go through that, they're not going to get sober. You can't make somebody get sober, just like you can't make somebody be awakened. It doesn't happen that way. And so if you think about this example, you can think about it even in another term. So let's say that you are sober. You rarely drink, you don't do any drugs, you don't do any pharmaceuticals, you're a very clean eater, and you care about your life and you're fully awakened. Are you going to be spending a lot of time with people who are full-on cocaine addicts all the time, who drink all day and don't go to work? Is that what you have in mind? Is that who you're going to hang out with? Because I can see the values are just so much similar. Y'all's lives are parallel. It's like you're twins. No, you wouldn't do that, right? You wouldn't, because you wouldn't have time for that. Because it doesn't go with you. If you're on the top of your game and you're working and even if you're going to school or you're raising a family, you don't have time for that. So if you're an awakened person and you've found the higher being and you've found your demons and you've overcome that and you've dealt with your own personal toxicity and you've dealt with your own personal addictions and you've gotten rid of anger and resentment and revenge, why would you spend time with somebody that hasn't done any of that? Why would you spend time with somebody who's holding on to that? Because what happens is we get into these relationships a lot of times with people who are not awakened. And I'm not meaning this in a mean way or a judgmental way. I'm just saying they're not. And so let's say you get into a relationship with a full-on narcissist, for example. And they put you down at any moment they can. And they're constantly putting you down and judging you, using the silent treatment as a tactic. There's a lot of things that go on in the situation. And I think a lot of times we give them the benefit of the doubt because we know that they had a painful childhood. Okay. And I think many of you and I, we've all had upbringing issues, but we still say, well, they had a childhood that was pretty tough. And, I think it's just me, overthinking it. And, I don't think they really meant to be that mean or rude. And I don't know, maybe that's just the only way they can cope with it is a silent treatment. Okay, get it. So we make all these excuses. And we make all these excuses and we make all these excuses. And eventually, what do? We try to, reconnect or apologize or do something to reconnect the relationship. And so then we get into this circular trap where we have somebody that is not awakened and we're trying to get into their headspace for them to understand what's going on. And what's happening is that we're holding on to relationships with people who are unawakened, who are still dealing with their demons, their toxicity, and we're taking it on as our own and sidling with it. It's like you're sidling up with all this pain. It's like you've decided, okay, well, you know what? I really want a good life for myself, but you know what? I'm just going to sidle up to this. Okay? And a lot of us get in these relationships and we don't realize it until later on because we refuse to see the red flags. Because we don't want to. Because we want to just see the positive things. We want to just see those few things, and we don't want to deal with the rest of it. We don't want to deal with the rest of it because if we deal with the rest of it, we got to be honest with ourselves. And many of us don't want to deal with confrontations, and we'd have to eventually let it go and move on. And then we have to deal with, being sad over that and dealing with that and mourning the death of that relationship and then moving on. But many of us don't want to do that. Even though we're awakened, we feel like we can still somehow or not revive it. This person will eventually come to their senses and all will be good. And I don't know about you, but that's never really worked out in my entire life. Even though I put a lot of time and sweat and blood and sweat and tears into hoping that would happen. Usually what happened is what? Yeah, I got screwed. Okay? And I wasted a lot of time when I shouldn't have been wasting that time. And now that I'm more awakened than I was before, I realize more my personal value and my personal value of time and health. You only have so much time on this planet. Your health is important and your time is critical. And to deal with people who are still toxic and to give them that amount of time, it to me is a waste. It's a waste. And when we get more and more awakened, we realize the value of our time. We realize the value of ourself, and we find a higher self-esteem, and we realize that we owe ourselves more. We owe ourselves to care about ourselves and to not put ourselves in relationships with toxic people. And a lot of times what happens is we get into this relationship and we become very codependent because we're trying to make it work, okay? We want this person to be with us. We want to, whatever it is, we feel like we're the savior. We're dealing with our own toxicity. And it just and a lot of times too, is that this is another roadblock in our life. We create this relationship because we don't want to actually trip ourselves. Like you put your leg out and you trip yourself. You don't really want to do that. You'd rather have someone else do it. But you created it, meaning that you brought this relationship into your life and for a fact that it's toxic. Okay, I've done it where I look back and I go, man, wow, was that my own personal, sabotage? Am I that smart that I can sabotage my own self like that by just using somebody else as the sabotage, and then I don't have to take responsibility for sabotaging myself? I mean, it's kind of a deep thought. Think about it. Bringing a relationship into your life and accepting that and knowing all the red flags and still trying to go through it, but yet realizing and knowing subconsciously this isn't going to work. We are very powerful people, and we can do a lot of amazing stuff with our power. Stay tuned. I'll be talking more about this subject and being present in your daily moment. Live Your True Life Perspectives. We'll be back in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I've been asking you if you're ready to live your true life, to be authentic, to be real, to be awakened. And once you have figured out being awakened and how to do that on a daily basis and how to make that a lifestyle choice, letting go of those codependent and toxic relationships in your life and realizing that a lot of times we allow those things in our life as a roadblock because we don't want to actually block ourselves, but we actually use someone else because we're tricking ourselves into thinking that it's someone else's problem. Now realize the last time that you've had a toxic person in your life, think about it. Let's say that you have a narcissist in your life and you keep going back and through the motions, you're dealing with the pain and the agony and all that great stuff, and you keep making excuses and you keep asking your friends and family what you should do, and you go back and forth and you waver back and forth and you go back in and you apologize even when it's not your apology and all that stuff. Okay, why are we doing that? We're doing that because we don't value our time. We don't value our life enough. Because if we did, we wouldn't be dealing with this. When somebody's on their deathbed, they don't have time for that. Okay? When somebody's got 2 minutes to live, they don't have time for that. Okay? When somebody's got a 6-month life expectancy, they don't hang or work or deal with anybody but who they want to deal with, and definitely not somebody that's playing mind games. And when you begin to be more and more awakened, you begin to see that and you detach yourself and you divide yourself from that because you realize that's not going to get you anywhere. And it's definitely going to get in the way of you living that true life because you're going to be thinking about that negativity all the time, worried about it, not understanding why the other person said that or did that, questioning this, questioning that, questioning yourself, questioning your awareness, questioning and wondering if it's your fault. All those things that many of us, once we figure out, we realize we don't have the time for. You know, one of the things that I really want to talk about before the end of the show today is being present in the moment. When we're present in the moment and we are aware of where we are and we feel good, the thing about being present is we're not judging. You know, we're not like thinking about the past. We're not walking into a new situation just thinking about how bad the past was or how great the past was or the future, any of that. We're not making judgments. We're right in the present moment. We're being present in our life. And our life is a present. It is a gift, right? And we realize the value of that gift and how important it is to not limit ourselves and to not get in the way of our own growth. You know, when we get in the way of our own growth, that basically impairs us. It impairs us from growing to where we need to be at, from learning the things that we need to learn, from letting go of the negative cycles in our life. And I think anything that's a negative cyclical thing in our life has to be let go, but we have to understand why we have to let it go and the lesson that we are to learn from letting that go. And a lot of these lessons that we learn later on in life are very impactful and very amazing lessons to learn. Amazing lessons to learn. And these lessons, though, they're tough. Because a lot of these lessons that come to us are things that we've had to deal with since childhood and things that have been very difficult for us. And so I like to tell people that, you know, when you're dealing with some of the toughest lessons that you have to learn, it will come in threes because it's going to test you. Okay? And once you've figured out, it might test you again to make sure that you're on target. I mean, like, I had to understand that I didn't need to hang out with people that devalued me because I am a valuable person. Now, why did I hang out with those people in the first place? Because I had a low self-esteem. Why did I have a low self-esteem? Because I realized, you know, not being able to be diagnosed with a disease that I had when I was a kid all my whole life and wondering what it was and going through experimental surgeries and dealing with doctors all over the United States and being in pain and having a handicap sticker and being different than everybody else, that can really wear on you, okay? That can really, really wear on you. And it can really take away from your self-esteem. Not only are you a sick kid, but they don't even know what the heck you have. Okay? And nobody understands it. And that really, 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 really did a number on my self-esteem. And I didn't realize that. For a long time. I was like, no, it has nothing to do with it. No, that makes me stronger. Well, yeah, it does in the end. It does make you stronger, but you have to accept it, and you can't judge yourself negatively about it. And that was where my self-esteem issues were coming, and that's why I would undermine myself and spend time with people that didn't value me. And I was okay with it. And we all do something to some degree that we need to be aware of. And once we become more awakened and realize our value, we stop doing that. But it can be hard to stop that cycle because you're in it. And you begin to question yourself. And I think a lot of times when we're about to overcome a cycle that we've been going through, we question ourselves. Because the mind wants to keep you in that cycle. That your mind, to some degree, wants to keep you there because it's used to it. Okay? Even to some degree, your life wants to keep you there because then nothing has to change. Status quo stays the same. Everything stays status quo and nothing has to change. But when you begin to get awakened and you let go of the things holding you back, okay, and you let go of your own things that are holding you back internally, and you deal with the demons from your past and you let them go and you move on, and you deal with your own toxicity and you realize your own personal higher value and the power within, and then you begin to value yourself. And as you build up that personal value within yourself, you begin to actually realize how valuable you are, and then you don't have time for this other crap in your life. And it becomes very apparent to you. And that's when you begin to deal with a lot of these lifestyle choices that have been an underlining genre or plot in your life. I mean, I've seen it. I've gone through a lot of narcissistic relationships, and I look back at the patterns, and there's a distinct pattern. It's distinct. It's so, anybody could have seen it. And it's easier for us to step back and see other people's issues. It's harder for us to step back and realize our own. But once we're able to do that, we are even more awakened because we realize that we can do that. But when I've realized these patterns, I realized that it was based on a lower self-esteem, and it was based on the fact that I didn't value my time as much as I should. Okay? And I saw that other people had more value than I did, or I believed that because of my lower self-esteem, that instead of standing up for myself, that I would just deal with it. Okay? And now I realize that's not what I'm going to do anymore. That's not what I'm going to do because I don't want to do that. And I've realized that working on myself will change the world. You hear people talking about, let's change the world. Let's do this. Let's go rule the world. Well, you know what? The best way to do that is to work on yourself and to be awakened and fulfilled and to get ready to live that life. Live your true life perspectives. We'll be back this time in 3 shakes.